Banaz Mahmod was a 20-year-old Kurdish woman living in London, whose life was tragically cut short in 2006 in an act of horrific violence carried out by her own family. Her story is one of courage, heartbreak, and systemic failure that exposed the brutal reality of so-called honor killings. Her death prompted significant reforms in the UK, raising awareness about the urgent need to protect women facing cultural violence. Banaz was born in Iraqi Kurdistan in 1985. She was the second of 5 children, growing up in a traditional Kurdish family. Her family moved to the UK in search of a better life, bringing Banaz to South London during her childhood. Despite her new surroundings, Banaz's life was shaped by the deeply ingrained cultural norms her family clung to, even as they settled in a modern and multicultural city. These norms would dictate the course of her life and, ultimately, her death. At just 17 years old, Banaz was married off to a much older man in an arranged marriage. Her husband was from the Kurdish community and was believed to be a good match in terms of honor and social standing. However, behind closed doors, he subjected Banaz to horrific abuse. He physically beat her, sexually assaulted her, and controlled her every move. Banaz, barely an adult herself, endured the abuse in silence at first. The fear of shame, judgment, and rejection by her family kept her trapped in the marriage. Eventually, her resilience and strength gave her the courage to speak out. Banaz confided in her family about the abuse, hoping they would intervene and help her escape her violent husband. Instead, her cries for help fell on deaf ears. To her family, Banaz's suffering was secondary to preserving their honor within the community. They dismissed her complaints and pressured her to remain with her husband, warning her that leaving the marriage would bring disgrace to them all. But Banaz refused to remain a victim. Against her family's wishes, she left her abusive husband, walking away from a marriage that had left her physically and emotionally scarred. This decision marked a turning point in her life and her relationships with her family. In their eyes, she had defied their authority and brought shame upon them. Her act of independence was seen not as an assertion of her rights, but as a betrayal. Returning to her family home for refuge, Banaz found anything but safety. Instead of supporting her, her family's resentment towards her grew. Her every move was monitored, and she was subjected to constant emotional abuse. Things took a darker turn when Banaz began a new relationship with a man named Rahmat Soleimani. Unlike her former husband, Rahmat treated Banaz with love and respect. For the first time, she experienced what it meant to be in a caring, equal partnership. To Banaz, this relationship symbolized hope and freedom. To her family, it was a disgrace that tarnished their honor. Her father, uncle, and other relatives saw her actions as an unforgivable insult to their reputation. Rahmat, whom Banaz loved deeply, became a target of their ire as well. Banaz's choice to pursue her own happiness instead of adhering to her family's strict expectations sealed her fate. Banaz, sensing the growing hostility, reached out to the police multiple times for help. She described the threats she faced and named the individuals she feared would harm her, including her own father and uncle. In one heart-wrenching moment, Banaz recorded a video message detailing her fears. In it, she named her potential killers, including her own family members. Her pleas for protection, however, were met with indifference and skepticism. Authorities dismissed her concerns as overblown or exaggerated, failing to recognize the imminent danger she was in. On January 24, 2006, Banaz's worst fears were realized. Her father, Banaz Mahmod, and uncle, Ari Mahmod, conspired with 3 other men to murder her. They lured Banaz to her grandmother's house under the guise of reconciliation, exploiting her desire to mend family relationships. Once there, she was ambushed and brutally attacked. Over the course of 2 hours, she was raped, beaten, and strangled with a shoelace. The details of her murder are chilling, a calculated act carried out by those who were supposed to protect and love her. After killing Banaz, her murderers placed her body in a suitcase and buried it in a garden in Birmingham. The act of burying her in such a manner, hidden away as if her life meant nothing, underscores the horrifying disregard for her humanity. For months after her death, her family maintained a facade of normalcy, participating in community events and pretending that Banaz had simply run away. The investigation into Banaz's disappearance was painfully slow, mirroring the systemic failures that marked her attempts to seek help. It wasn't until Rahmat, her boyfriend, reported her missing that the case gained traction. Rahmat's persistence forced authorities to take a closer look, and eventually, the truth began to surface. Investigators uncovered evidence that revealed the extent of the premeditation involved in Banaz's murder. Months after her death, Banaz's body was discovered. The suitcase in which she was buried bore witness to the horrific crime. The discovery shocked the nation and brought her case to the forefront of public consciousness. During the trial, the chilling evidence presented painted a grim picture of the so-called honor her killers claimed to defend. The court heard intercepted phone calls in which the murder was discussed casually, as if it were an ordinary chore. Her father, uncle, and 3 accomplices were convicted of her murder. The sentences handed down to them were seen as a small measure of justice, but no punishment could undo the loss of Banaz's life. The trial and subsequent convictions brought the issue of honor-based violence into the spotlight, sparking outrage and a demand for change. Banaz's death was a watershed moment in the UK's approach to honor-based violence. Her case highlighted glaring gaps in the way police and social services handled such incidents. It became clear that cultural sensitivity could not come at the cost of protecting vulnerable individuals. In the wake of her murder, police forces across the UK implemented specialized training to identify and respond to cases involving honor-based abuse. Despite these reforms, Banaz's story remains a sobering reminder of how much work remains to be done. Honor killings continue to occur, both in the UK and globally. Many victims, like Banaz, are failed by the systems meant to protect them. Her death serves as a call to action, a demand for greater vigilance, empathy, and accountability from society as a whole. Banaz Mahmod was more than a victim. She was a young woman with dreams, courage, and an unyielding desire for freedom. Her resilience in leaving her abusive marriage and her determination to find love and happiness on her own terms are testaments to her strength. Her courage inspires us to continue the fight against honor-based violence and to advocate for the protection of all women, regardless of cultural or societal expectations.